Hi, and welcome back to another episode of Art World Confessions. Today I'll be speaking about art in Trinidad and Tobago, and that was the country that I was born in. That's the country of my birth, and it will be a bit challenging to talk about art in Trinidad and Tobago because I don't want to mention any names of artists and then forget others. The thing about art in Trinidad and Tobago is that it's a small country, relatively small country, and everyone knows everyone. And everyone knows the history of everyone, and everyone has to say something about everyone. So that's the downside of art in Trinidad and Tobago. I would say, however, that there are many good artists in Trinidad and Tobago, and many of them have shown at places like the National Gallery in Trinidad and Tobago, and at many of the contemporary art galleries that exist in Trinidad and Tobago. Most of them are in Port of Spain, the capital, but there are other galleries around the island and other spaces where art is shown. A few years back, I did an exhibition at the National Museum in Port of Spain, and there are artists, I'll just mention one, for example, who recently had a show at a major gallery in New York City, Che Lovelace. He's the son of Earl Lovelace, who is one of Trinidad's premier writers. And there are other people who have passed through, whether it's artist residencies or any other number of institutions here, some of them academic institutions where they've taught art. And these artists are really working in very special ways and working in a way that is in some ways Caribbean but influenced by the wider world. There was an exhibition a few years back as well at the Brooklyn Museum about Caribbean art. Infinite Island was the title of that exhibition. It was curated by Tumelo Musaka. And I haven't been in touch with Tumelo in a while, but I wrote short essays for that catalog, and if you look for that, you'll see some artists as well are mentioned in that exhibition. And from time to time, an artist will pop up in the international scene, having come out of Trinidad and Tobago, and you could probably just Google that and find out who. A few years back, there was a big art crowd coming to the Caribbean because Peter Doig had lived there for many years, and Chris O'Feely as well. I think one of them, I think Chris is married to a Trinidadian or someone of Trinidadian descent. So there was a whole group of collectors and gallerists coming in and out of Trinidad. They had a film night in Trinidad where all the art crowd would go to watch these movies that I think primarily Peter curated. And things have changed since that time because I'm not sure what Chris O'Feely is doing these days, but I know Peter Doig is not based in Trinidad anymore, although he probably goes back and forth. One Christmas I was there and I was lucky enough to be in the same place that one of his art dealers from New York and some of the people around Chris and his family were in the same northern resort for New Year's Eve, and that was funny. It was the time before my grandmother passed, and I'm happy to have brought her to Trinidad at that time and spent time with her there, going around, seeing things, meeting people. So that was fun, being on the beach New Year's Day with all of this art crowd that you wouldn't imagine would be in this remote village in the north of Trinidad. But it was very cool and very fun. And I mean, people still go through there who are not related to this group of artists, but I don't know all of them. I myself go back and forth to Trinidad, not that often these days, but I was just there recently. And I think one big part of the art in Trinidad, not to be forgotten, is around Carnival and people like Peter Minshall. I think Peter Minshall recently passed away, but he was one of the premier mass makers, they're called, and a really great artist in his own right. And I don't think there are many people who have bands these days doing as much art as Peter did. Again, I'm not up on all the stuff that's going on right now with Carnival and stuff like that, but for sure in the old days, and definitely with the old style of mass, there's a lot of artistry in that, a lot of creativity, a lot of sculpture and stuff that goes into making these big floats and these costumes and the devil mask and all this sort of stuff, which comes out of our West African heritage, I believe. And I mean, many other cultures have also had a carnival, which are European based. But having visited Gabon, and I'll tie this in with the previous episode, having visited Gabon and seeing what goes on there in terms of the Bwiti tradition, you see how that would have influenced Carnival for people of African descent. And in terms of art, what else is there to say? I mean, I think a lot of the great artists in Trinidad have done really well in their milieu in Trinidad and Tobago. Not many of them have been able to come out into the wider world, and I'm not sure why that is so. I mean, there are 3 or 4 names that I could just name off the top of my head. I only named one for now, and because that's the most recent example I can think of. But a lot of it, I think, has to do with the fact that in Trinidad and Tobago, and I'm speaking from experience myself, it is almost impossible to figure out how to work with the Ministry of Culture, and this is a real problem. For years, I've been trying to get in touch with someone there to help build a presence at, for example, the Venice Biennale, where there's been a pavilion for the Bahamas, there's been a pavilion for Haiti, there's been multiple pavilions for Caribbean islands in Venice, which is one of the most premier places to showcase international art. But Trinidad and Tobago has had zero presence. Why? Not because we don't have any good artists, but because we haven't been able to organize. And that goes back to me as well. Not just organizing the finances, but finding someone in the government who would even write a letter to say, okay, this person can represent Trinidad and Tobago and raise funds on behalf of Trinidad and Tobago to show Trinidad and Tobago artists outside of Trinidad and Tobago in this international platform called the Venice Biennale. I just eventually gave up. I mean, I have a child now, and I've been spending all these years really taking care of my child. But before that, I was really banging down the door every time I was in Trinidad, making appointments, getting in touch with people, following through. One time I was supposed to go to an appointment. I showed up at the appointment only to have the secretary tell me, what? Who? Mr. So-and-so? Oh, he just left for the weekend. This is like, I don't know, a Thursday afternoon or something like 2 p.m. or maybe it was Friday at like 10 a.m. I had a legitimate appointment. The so-called minister or whoever is in charge who was supposed to meet me had forgotten about the meeting and went off for his weekend. I mean, this is the kind of thing that really frustrates me about art in Trinidad. The people who are actually doing the art are shortchanged by the people in administration who are just, you know, ridiculous bureaucrat paper pushers, early off to the weekend type of mindset. And I know I'm probably going to get some pushback for having said this, but it's definitely been my experience. And I don't know how I could get around this whole situation unless I were to finance a pavilion myself out of my own pocket. And even then, you know, you still need some government endorsement if you are to show some stuff and affiliated with the Venice Biennale. Anyways, Akuzuru has been one of the artists who I would definitely show at the Venice Biennale. She has shown internationally all over the world, in Asia, in India, in Germany, all over Europe and in America as well. And her work is performance-based, and if you don't know her work, you should look it up as well. And like I said, I didn't want to talk about artists because it's going to start a whole brouhaha, I'm sure, among the artists. But again, those are 2 who will come to mind right now because I've been in touch with them recently, and I know their work very well from having spent time with them and knowing them personally. And it's good actually that I balanced out saying 1 male artist with 1 female artist. At least I got both sexes covered. I mean, I didn't go for the other whatever you call it, you know, these pronouns, these personal pronouns that everyone's going nuts about these days. But I'm sure there's all types of artists that can fit into those categories. And I think that's it for today. You know, I could probably speak a bit more, but as I said, I'd be walking on like some tender rocks right now, and I don't want to step on anyone's toes. It is a small country, and there are a lot of great artists. I can't mention them all here, but by all means, check it out yourself. Check out the museums online. Check out everything. Their galleries, you can just Google them, look through their past exhibitions. Again, there's lots of creative stuff going on in Trinidad. Trinidad and Tobago is full of creative people, and I'm really happy to be from there. So thanks for being here. Like, share, subscribe, hit the bell notification button, and please, by all means, come back to see another episode of Art World Confessions. I'll be having another one very soon. Have a great week.